there, St. John Nicholas, with my friendly bow, the feast of reason and the flow of soul.
Hello, and welcome to Feasts of Reason. Today, we're joined by Zafra Lerman, Dr. Zafra Lerman, a scientist, educator, peace builder, and someone who has spent decades doing something most people consider nearly impossible, getting people who deeply distrust each other to sit down, talk, and work together. As a chemist, professor, and founder of the Malta Conferences Foundation, Zafra has brought together scientists from across the Middle East, including Israelis, Palestinians, Iranians, Jordanians, Egyptians, and others, to collaborate across some of the world's deepest political and religious divides. Her work through the Malta Conferences has earned her international recognition, including multiple nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize, for using science as a bridge across conflict. Her new book, Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Journey, tells the story of that journey, but more importantly, it raises questions that are at the heart of this show. When disagreement runs deep, when identity, history, religion, and politics all collide, what role can reason actually play? Can science create trust where politics fails? Can the shared pursuit of truth overcome tribal division? And what does it take, not theoretically, but practically, to make that happen? Today, we're going to explore those questions. Dr. Lerman, welcome to Feast of Reason.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's your book, which I dove into, at times reads like a Jean le Carré spy novel. With you skulking around the streets of back streets of Cold War Moscow, fighting for dissidents there. Not the sort of thing I was expecting from a book written by a chemistry professor. So I think it would be great. I have a lot that I want to talk with you about today. But I wonder if you could give a brief summary of how that chemistry professor came to be so involved and effective in international politics and human rights advocacy.
It's very interesting because when I finished my PhD, I came to do a postdoc at Cornell University with a professor named Frank Long. He was a terrific chemist, but in addition, he was very involved in the world. He was almost for every president, he was on the scientific advisory to the president.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first director of the Arms Control, Disarmament Agency. He was involved in issues of peace and human rights, and I was as fascinated with his other activities as I was fascinated with his chemistry and his knowledge in chemistry. And I remember I used to come, he was in a different building because he started at Cornell the program on science, technology, and society, and he sat in another building, and I would go there to talk to him. And I remember till now that we were discussing the entropy of activation of a reaction. I'm not going to explain what it is, so I hope we don't lose the audience just with the word of energy of activation. But the energy of activation can be positive, can be negative. So we are having a very big discussion. And then the secretary knocks on the door and says to him, I have on the phone Jerry Wisner. Jerry Wisner was by then the president of MIT. His claim to fame is that he discovered the radar in Second World War, and he was the science advisor to Kennedy. And she had on the phone George Kistiakowsky. He was from Harvard, and he was the science advisor to Eisenhower. So I am, fascinated with all what is going on, and I'm listening to the lecture, and they are talking against ballistic missiles and that the U.S. should not have ballistic missiles. And I am so involved with all that. And I said, oh my God, I have to get involved with this guy, not only by doing chemical reaction, but I have to get involved in all these other activities. It sounds fascinating. And then the interesting thing is that he puts the phone down, and I'm still thinking about the conversation, and he said, it must be positive. And I said, what? And he said, the entropy of activation. I already long ago forgot about it.
He didn't miss a beat. He was still.
He just continued from the same sentence
Yeah.
where he stopped. So I was thrown into this world by working with him and getting very, very involved in that. And then the American Chemical Society had a committee, established the Committee on Scientific Freedom and Human Rights. And it was a subcommittee of a big international activities committee. And they nominated me to chair it. Usually you chair a committee or a subcommittee for 3 years, but I chaired this one for 26 years. From its birth till its death, when it was disappeared. And through this committee, I got involved with a lot of human rights committees and groups that are working on human rights. I became the vice president of the board for chemistry for the Committee of Concerned Scientists. This is only human rights. And through that, I started going to the Soviet Union, but I had the privilege to meet the most famous dissident that today the young generation doesn't know the name, Andrei Sakharov, but by those days everybody knew the name. And he told me to take a crash course in Russian because every translator that I will get will be a KGB agent. So I took a crash course in Russian, and I was always entering the Soviet Union with a group of scientists, and we were during the day giving lectures in universities, meeting with Russian professors, having seminars. And after midnight, I would disappear by myself and would go through dark alleys where I organized before to meet one of the dissidents. And this dissident would take me to other places, and we collected dissidents till we came around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. to a dark attic. And then there would be like 50 dissidents. And I would distribute scientific material because all of them were fired from their jobs, were not allowed to have scientific material. Few were in hard labor in Siberia, so their family members came. Few were in prison, the family members came. I would give a seminar, which was illegal, and then I would collect the CVs of all the people that I had to work on their behalf and bring it back to the US. The chapter on human rights in my book, Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Odyssey, has a lot of funny things in that because there were a lot of funny things that happened with dissidents that managed to be released. And
funny, but at any moment you could have been arrested by the KGB. And I mean, we're talking Cold War Russia, and you're helping dissidents. I mean,
everything I did was illegal, so they had enough reason. Yes, this is correct. I risked my own life for people that I had never met.
Wow, extraordinary.
And in the chapter, I put a letter that one of them wrote that he always was puzzled why a person living in peace and freedom would risk their life for somebody that is in the other side of the globe and that they never met, but they came to the conclusion that these two shared the same values and need for science, something that you don't find in the journals, made science both human and humane. But sure, I could be every time I could be arrested, and I got it from the American Physical Society. Also, I'm a chemist. The Andrei Sakharov Award for Human Rights for all my activities, because after that I was very active in China after Tiananmen Square. Was much tougher to work in China than the Soviet Union. In Russia after that was very tough too, and still is tough. And now the issue of human rights is even worse than it ever was. So,
Yeah.
I don't know
Mm.
today when I'm thinking about all that, if I would be brave enough today to start running a dark coalition. But by that stage, I did not have even second thoughts.
Wow. One of the things that really struck me, I had Raphael Cohen Almagor on the show, he studied the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for decades, and one of the things he is really focused on is how the negotiations and why they break down, and he pointed to a lot of cultural and religious and political issues and how both sides have kind of struggled with that. And I wonder, it seems that you have had so much more success with science, and that specifically chemistry. Does this neutralize some of those things? Is it a kind of a way in the back door? Why do you suppose it's been so much more successful than these direct, political negotiations?
It takes a lot to be successful in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I was lucky. The first time I was involved, we did not call it science diplomacy by then. It was in 1982, where I was on the executive committee of the Albert Einstein Peace Prize Foundation, where every year we gave a Peace Prize. Most of the people went on and got the Peace Nobel Prize. But there was an idea that Israel and Egypt signed a peace agreement, but it was not really a peace agreement. It was a no-war agreement because there was nothing going on between
This
the two.
was in the 70s, the one that the Carter administration was involved in?
Yes, it was
Okay.
signed. So
Yeah.
then, 1982, we came to the conclusion that we should do something and bring the people together. Because the first year after signing the agreement, all the Israelis went to see Egypt. It's a very interesting country. And after every Israeli already seen Egypt, the Egyptians didn't come the other way, and there was nothing going on, but there was not war. So the idea was Egypt had a lot of problems with their agriculture by that period. Why? The Nile used to every year flood, and it would flood for miles from the Nile. And it would have such good nutrients that the agriculture in all this area was outstanding. But then the Russian built the Aswan Dam for the Egyptian and did not take into account the importance of the flooding of the Nile. The Nile stopped flooding, the agriculture became all yellow, and there was no agriculture. So the idea was that we will try to build in Israel. There are two agricultural community. One is called a kibbutz, that is all a commune. The other one is called moshav, where everybody is separated, but all the produce is brought to the same place and they sell everything together. And this is what they have in common. A kibbutz, you eat it together, you do everything together. So
Interesting.
our idea was that we want to build something like a moshav that will depend on Israeli knowledge that was very good to make arid land bloom. And the Egyptian will benefit because they will start having agricultural settlements like that.
Yeah.
So in 1982, we had a conference in Ajaccio, Corsica. And this is where the Albert Einstein Peace Prize Foundation people, it was all very, very wealthy people that gave their money for that. And people asked me, what are you doing there? I said, lowering the average age drastically. Cannot do it anymore now. But then I enjoyed doing it. And we all went to Ajaccio, Corsica, and we invited a delegation of Egyptian agronomists and Israeli agronomists. And at night, I described this in my book. It was very funny because at night the American had a jet lag and they went to sleep. I had a jet lag, but I didn't go to sleep. The Israelis went, all of them, for a walk along the water, and the Egyptians sat in the balcony and talked. And I joined the Egyptian. And I gave them my business card that said Chicago, but I opened my mouth and they said, oh, you're an Israeli, because they detected the accent. And we started talking. And there was a very, very smart man by the name of Mahmoud Mahfouz. He was the health minister for Sadat. He was an MD, PhD, and the head of the cancer research. And he said to me, if you want this meeting to succeed, I'm going to give you a few hints that if they are not observed, it will not succeed. There were a lot of attempts, and all of them failed. First, he said, you have two nationalities that always come and start, look what we can teach. The American and the Israelis are always want to show you what they can show you. If they want to succeed, everybody is equal. It should be, let's see what we can learn from each other. If we will not start on this basis, this will fail too. And he gave me a lot of hints how to make this conference that we were successful. And I took everything to when I built the Malta Conference. One thing he did not give me, but I learned that at 1 o'clock in the morning, the Israelis were coming from the beach and they start joining. At 1:30, we were all sitting, the Egyptian and the Israelis together and talking. And suddenly the windows of the hotel open and the wives of the people that ran the people that gave the money, the wives started screaming, Zafra, we want to sleep and you're making noise. And I replied, I am achieving want to sleep. So, but I learned one more thing for the Malta Conference. No accompanying members.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of other things that the Egyptians taught me that make a conference successful. Therefore, in Malta, immediately the decision was no accompanying member. I did not need wives to scream. The second was everybody is equal, so we must raise the money and pay for everybody equal. So there are no rich and poor and great scientists, less great. So the point is we have plenary lectures who will give the plenary lectures in order not to have an equality, because few countries are better in science than others. So the idea was plenary lectures only by Nobel laureates. So we are letting Sweden decide who can give our plenary lecture and not anybody else.
I see.
And taking into account all the nuances that I learned from the Egyptian, what they taught me in order to succeed, and it was very successful.
What was interesting about what you just were saying is that it seemed like there were two things really that you learned about the personal kind of that, these conferences are made up of people, and then there's certain, ways we're all just people and social creatures, and being able to connect with people on a personal level is really important. But also, by having the as you put it, the squeeze, but having restricting it to Nobel laureates, you remove all this kind of any cultural and political friction there could be, because this is just being decided separate from all of that. So you don't have any of this hierarchy of having to argue about it, which that makes a lot of sense.
Correct. This is what made it very successful. And the Palestinian once said to me, this is the best conference for us, because every other conference we always hear, our brothers, the Palestinian, could not pay, so we had to find funding for them. Here we are equal to everybody else. And this gives us a very different feeling. It's very hard because you have to raise the money. And as you know, for peace, there is not so much money. There is much more money for weapons of destruction.
We always seem to find the money for that, don't we?
But this is why this is such a successful conference, is because every small point is taken into account. The Nobel laureates, and we try to have young people, so there is people that continue the mission. So the Nobel laureates and the graduate student stay in the same hotel. Usually the Nobel laureates are in a very high-level 5-star hotel, and the rest stay differently. Here, everybody stays at the same hotel. Everybody eats the meals together, no assigned seats. So you can sit next to, and we have science ministers, we have presidents of university, but everybody is equal in the conference, and this what makes it so successful. But science, from the other point of view, if you ask, yes, it's very international. Science doesn't see religion, doesn't see language, doesn't see borders, doesn't see culture. I always like to say that a chemist in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and a chemist in Bethlehem in the West Bank can communicate their chemistry and understand it very well without any language. And this is what the uniqueness of science. And because of that, science diplomacy can succeed where other kinds of diplomacy fail.
Do some of the tensions that cause other diplomacy fail pop up? I mean, do you deal with, cultural or religious differences? I mean, there's certainly attempts
to have every religion. You have Christians, you have Sunni, you have Shia Muslims, you have Druze, and you have Jewish people. So you have all that, but it doesn't come up at all. It's even not, after a while, it's even hard to distinguish who is from which country, because it's so mixed up. The people are so concentrated on working together in the workshop that you really don't see, and there is no tension when you go to sit down. There is no assigned seat, but people will sit with each other. The first conference, that was in 2003, in the height of the Intifada, the uprising of the Palestinians, where suicide bombs were flying all over in Israel, in the cafes, in the restaurant, in the transportation, and it was after September 11, the first meal people sat according to their countries. But immediately at that meals, I walked around and I said, it cost us a lot of money to bring you here to sit and talk to the Egyptian, for example, to talk to your Egyptian colleague. We don't have to pay you for that.
You could do that at home. You can do that at the cafeteria at the university.
It's the last meal that you sit like that. I don't want
Yeah.
to see it anymore. And now it doesn't happen because it's usually 50% returning people and 50% new people. So the new people look at their colleagues from the country and they see them how they hug and kiss and happy to see the other colleagues.
Yeah.
So they fell in the same mode of behaving. And there is no, at the end of the conference, you think that it's a family reunion that came to an end. There are tears, there are hugging, there are kissing. I remember immediately after the pandemic, when it was the end of the pandemic, I remember I said, oh my God, I just was hugged and kissed by 100 people from all over. At least who knows what I'll get now.
Yeah.
You know, this is how people say goodbye when the conference comes to an end.
Yeah.
Sadly enough, we have a conference that has to start May 1st in Baku, Azerbaijan, but we have to move it and postpone it because Baku, the airport got few ballistic missiles, was destroyed, and the US just issued a big red warning for Americans not to go to Azerbaijan, and so is other countries. Still, a lot of the countries don't have airlines flying, so we cannot have it in May 1st. Very sad because we worked very hard on that and everybody was set to go already. And now
Are you going to reschedule, maybe in another location, or?
Yeah, but not for
Okay.
May 1st.
Yeah.
You can still, a lot of places don't have airlines to fly to other places. A lot of the countries have only their local airlines. So
Yeah, what a shame.
out of 15 Middle Eastern countries, probably 10 of them were involved in the war in getting all the Gulf, the Persian Gulf countries got a lot of missiles. Then you have Lebanon and Israel that is going, and Iran. And it's just, and I hope, we will postpone it by a few months, but yes, it will not be in Baku.
Yeah.
And we'll move it back to Malta. This is why the name Malta Conferences.
Yeah.
The first one was in
That was
Malta.
the first one, yeah.
And it was in Malta because it was the midst of the Intifada, and it was after September 11. So I felt that an island would be safer than a mainland.
Yeah.
You know, so therefore I thought Malta would be a safe place. In addition, there were very few countries that you had a direct flight to Malta. In that stage, maybe only London and Rome and Frankfurt. So it took almost a day for everybody to get to Malta.
Yeah.
And I thought, it would not be worse for terrorists to spend so much time to get to Malta and kill a lot of Muslims and few Jews. So therefore, Malta was selected as the first place for. And by that stage, Malta still was not part of the European Union. So it was everybody got a visa upon landing. We did not have the visa problem that now is a huge problem in any country. But the first one and the second one was in Malta, and everybody got the visa upon landing. But then they joined the EU, and the Schengen visa started all the problems that we started having, because it's very hard to find a country, even today, that wants all these countries. Like the US, I think at least 8 or 9 of the countries have a ban coming to the US. Could not even apply for a visa.
Well, we have a little bit of a head cold when it comes to human rights and supporting these kind of things right now, but I'm confident we're going to recover. So you may be hopefully. Hey, I wanted to follow up with you about the fraternity that you talked about, because to me that was very fascinating. I totally understand the trust that is built up with scientists, where it's this this dispassionate inquiry where you can communicate across these lines. But it sounds like you've done so much to build this more kind of personal connection that's among these people, and I'm wondering how much has that carried forward? Do people talk about that it changes their attitudes in the rest of their lives, or changes how they look
Oh,
at geopolitics or whatever? What is that? That's really the journey the odyssey that you're on, yeah?
100%. We give them a platform that they can see what unites them, not what separates them. And
Right.
we give them a platform to stop demonizing the unknown other. Then
Hmm.
there is a platform to develop cross-border collaboration that they cannot do anywhere else. But the demonizing the unknown other, it was a very interesting story when the Iraqis came. And here are Iraqi men in their 50s, 60s, and they came to me almost with tears in their eyes. And they said, we were lied to all our life. We
Mm.
always studied and learned and read that the Israelis are monsters, that they are they don't look like us. And here, the first time in our life, we met Israelis, and they are wonderful people, great scientists, and we are happy to be friends with them. Why? Well, we lied all our life. And this was, they were just practically angry
Hmm.
that they had built in their mind something that is so far away from truth.
Yeah, and that those divisions, which are essentially propaganda, right? Which get created and baked into the mind, are a huge obstacle to that trust. And I think that would you say that is really about a lack of trust, or is it more broken promises that's the biggest obstacle to peace?
I think that I don't know if it's lack of trust or it's hatred that is coming
Hmm.
for misinformation.
Hmm.
Because today with the social media, you see the hatred much, much more, because there is so much misinformation on social
Yeah.
media, lies that are going on, and it's just mind-boggling. Why is the human species using its advances for negative reasons and not for
Hmm.
positive reasons? It looks like all what we develop in order to have a better communication, understanding each other better, is being used for hatred.
Yeah.
Is being
Yeah. I
used
think.
for hatred. And it's, the demonstrations that were held in the Ivy League schools with the students joining and screaming from the river to the sea. But when they were interviewed, what sea? The majority answered the Black Sea. They even did not have any idea what they are saying. And, to me, it was, as an educator, and I spent all my life in academic, and I was telling always to my students, I want you to be involved. I want you to join demonstration, but it must be for a knowledgeable, intelligent point of view. I don't want to see my students ever as followers without knowing why are you following this group. And it was, when I saw the Columbia University in New York that cost probably $90,000 a year to educate, and to see the lack of critical thinking
Uh-huh.
of the students, for what are the parents paying the $90,000? They did not have any idea what they are screaming.
Yeah.
Taking
Well, I
note.
think we're social and tribal creatures, and I think that what happens so often in social media is the absolute, and this is a big part of what I'm trying to do, right? Is science is actually a subset of the process of reason, using critical
Oh,
thinking and logic, and using and the peer review you use in science is about being humble about what you believe, recognizing that you could be wrong, and putting that out into the knowledge hive to try to get that information. And I think what happens and what social media accelerates, the student example you gave is a perfect example. They have no idea what they're talking about. They just know that if they barf up this slogan, their crowd goes yeah, and they get this social points. So what we need to get back to is the humility about knowledge, and recognizing how little each of us as individuals know. It would be fascinating. I mean, I'm sure I could ask you if you got into the weeds about your particular area of chemistry, there would be these narrow areas that people work in. You have an incredibly broad, much broader knowledge, I'm sure, of science in general and chemistry in particular than an average person. But your expertise is probably confined
very
to an
narrow.
area, and
Very
I'm sure you'd be very humble about, much more than somebody who just looked something up on the internet about other areas of chemistry. And that humility and that recognition that knowledge is a shared resource, right? That it's and this is why I find what you're doing so exciting and wonderful, is that you're just living that. You're creating these situations where these knowledge hives are actually producing this ethical, moral, social progress among these people that is incredible. And it's tying the thing that's so special about us human beings, our ability to use reason and to share knowledge through language and science and reason to build progress. You're putting that into action, and I think it's wonderful.
there is between the people, it's not only that they develop friendship and respect to each other, you
Uh-huh.
can feel real love. They
Mm.
call each other the Malta family because, like for New Year's Eve, one of the participants will start. The Malta family will send to everybody Happy New Year to the Malta family.
Mhm.
Or we had now somebody from the Malta family, somebody that is involved with the Malta Conferences since its inception. He received the Nobel Prize this year in chemistry. His parents are Palestinian that left in 1948 to Jordan. He was born and grew up in Jordan and then came to the US and received now the Nobel Prize. They felt that the Malta family, somebody from the family received the Nobel Prize. It was such a happiness. You should have seen all the
Mm.
emails.
Mhm.
There is like a feeling of love between each other, and it's really an atmosphere that it's hard even to imagine that officially these people are enemies.
Mhm. Mhm. Ha
Enemies.
have you thought about, I'm sure you have you but have you had conversations with, say, physicists and people in other areas of science about
Oh, yeah,
doing
we have
something
all
similar to
the
what you're doing?
no, we have all the sciences
Okay.
because you cannot solve problems of climate change or water issues only by chemists. It's true that we chemists, the American Chemical Society, we call ourselves that we are the central science, but you need other scientists when you have a big. No, we have physicists, we have biologists, we have geologists, we have agronomists, hydrologists, we have engineers, especially all that for the water. There is one workshop that is water, energy, food security nexus, and there you
Mm.
have all the different. It started The first one was chemistry only because we started really as a project of the American Chemical Society, and nobody expected that it will grow to something like that. When I suggested it to the American Chemical Society, I thought that I'm going to prove that we can have a conference where scientists from all the Middle East will attend and we will have this conference. How about at the end of the conference, the participants said, no, we need continuation. It cannot be just one. So it's going on for 20-something years already. And it's all the time ongoing, even outside of the conference. People meet, people talk, people collaborate, people write papers together. So it's an ongoing process that started as a project of the American Chemical Society, and then the American Chemical Society established the Malta Conferences Foundation as a 501c3 non-for-profit, standalone. It was very nice when it was part of the American Chemical Society because they were involved in all the fundraising and in all the administration, all the things I don't like to do. They did. But now that we are independent and we are all volunteers, we don't have any paid employee. We are all volunteers. All that is done by volunteers.
And are you now faced with fundraising challenges? Is it difficult to raise enough money? Is that a stupid question? I apologize.
We are faced with fundraising. So we are faced with and people are having a very interesting attitude now. Oh, the Middle East. Oh, it's just like a disease. You want us to give money for this disease? It's becoming something like irritating to people. It's like a problem that is there. It's becoming much harder to raise the money. Much harder to raise the money and much harder to get. In my book, there is a chapter called From Mission Impossible to Mission Possible. And if you would, this is to get the visa for everybody. You have to be James Bond sometimes to get the visa for it. If you read this, there are stories that it's really practically unbelievable how at the end.
Wow.
I got
I look forward to that. I'm not to that part in the book yet. I'm looking forward to getting a copy so I can.
I'm going to say you,
continue.
yeah.
Appreciate that. I'm looking forward to that. I will also put the website for the Malta Conferences Foundation where people can make a donation. I'll put that in the comments of the video for the episode. So hopefully we'll help. We can help somehow a little bit there.
Even the book sales, all the profits go for the Malta Conference. I don't get any penny. I really wrote it as part of the fundraising. I was under pressure for years to write. First, I was under pressure to write a book on education because I believe that science education is a human right that belongs to all. And everybody should have a background in science in order to be able to function in our society that is scientific and technological. So I developed a way to teach science through art, music, dance, drama, rap, what you want, animation. So I had a contract to write the book, but did not have the time to write. And then the human rights came and people said, you must write it because people must see what one person could do to save people. And then came the Malta. So somebody said to me, if you write the book, you can give the proceeds to Malta, so it will be a fundraiser. And this is when at the end I wrote a book that is a result of 3 different books that were supposed to be written. But at the end, I put all in one book and tried to keep the pages not more than 200, because today is we are rushing too much to read 400, 500 pages. So I thought, and the book really is calling for action. It's Nature magazine, that is the most prestigious scientific magazine in the world, and they did a review on my book. But they have like a newsletter that they sent around where they have summary of selected article. But in the middle of the newsletter, they have always the quote of the day. And suddenly somebody sent it to me because the quote of the day was a quote from my book that they took from my book and then advertised the book. And the quote was that, I'll just give a little bit science. In order to have an atom bomb, you need to have a certain amount of uranium. If it's below this amount, after it's enriched, it's not enough to enrich it. It's still the amount has to be certain amount and above. And this amount is called the critical mass. Once you have the critical mass, you can start the chain reaction. So the quote of the day was that I would like to form a critical mass of scientists to start a chain reaction for peace. And this was the quote of the day that they picked up from the book.
I love that.
This is my dream.
This brings up a question I have about, so the conferences and the activities are really based around bringing scientists together to do science, but there's this human rights angle, and I'm wondering how is that integrated in? Is there any conflict between, this is all about science and scientists working together who just happen to be from different places, and that'll kind of make human rights sort of happen in the background? Or is it more overt than that? We are doing science, and we are doing science because it's going to lead to more human rights.
Look, we do science, and it's a scientific meeting that is titled Frontiers of Science, Innovation, Research and Education in the Middle East, A Bridge to Peace. This is the title of the conference. But as important as the science is, and the workshops, and the poster session, and the lecture, the social events are as important. And we have a lot of them. And the people can interact. And a lot of things are being discussed informally and being the informal part is as important as the formal part. But the Malta Conference is really, the purpose is to use science diplomacy as a bridge to peace in the Middle East. The kind of people are there, and they are concerned with human rights too, but this is not. The human rights part is a separate part that I work in my life with another group. Here we have one purpose. Scientists, not in the US, but all around the world, have respect and have a very special status with government. Governments know that they cannot do weapons of mass destruction without scientists. Therefore, I feel it's the scientist's responsibility to work towards peace, because science is an interesting subject. It can prolong life, need prolonged life, but it can cut life short with all the weapons that scientists develop. So our purpose here is to move scientifically everything towards peace. And people that know each other cannot be enemies. And this is what is so sad. The fact that the countries are killing each other, but the people want to be with each other. It's like there's no relationship with what the governments are doing and what the people want. The people want to live together. They want to
Yeah,
work together. They want to be together. They don't want all what is going on. This hatred. From the other point of view, I always say that the uneducated, thirsty, therefore we work on water, uneducated, unemployed, thirsty young person doesn't have much to lose in life.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very key thing in my world is the human flourishing is whether it is having a level of material security and psychological security, so not just physiological but psychological, where you really can't expect somebody who's trying to figure out how to stay alive until dinner time to put a lot of thought into how we're gonna raise all boats and create human flourishing. So there's a that
Well,
that producing that prosperity is absolutely key, and it's we are in some sense we've made incredible progress in terms of the human flourishing over the last 100 years, but there's some ways that we're moving backwards now. There's some threats to that progress that we have to take very seriously. And yes, the more scientists we can get into the breach, who are um, the real point of reason spear, right, in promoting human progress, the better we'll be for sure. What would you want a young scientist to read your book? What takeaway would you want them to have from reading your book?
I want them to realize that it's wonderful to be a scientist. It's wonderful to work in the lab and do research, but that they have responsibility
Mhm,
to help to make the world a better place too.
mhm.
And as scientists, get involved in helping to make the world a better place. Look, there are a lot of places where people have very little water to drink. There
Yeah,
are a lot of scientific solutions to that. We just have to use it and bring it to the places that it's needed. And the point is that scientists usually are so concentrated on the research, on the science, on that they forget to use their science for other issues.
yeah.
And I wanted them for my book to see, a woman, I'll go back to the human rights for a minute, a woman alone in the Soviet Union, where every move not right, you could be arrested,
Mhm,
uh, risking. I remember that we asked somebody to take some material for the dissidents, scientific material, but when the person arrived to Russia, to the Soviet Union, and they started looking, the person got so nervous that he fell and broke a leg. And
mm,
then, because, it's you do something illegal in the Soviet Union. It's a simple thing that is legal everywhere else to share with scientists scientific material, but the Soviets wanted the dissidents not to be able to develop in their science. They wanted practically
yeah,
to make them die scientifically. So it's you need people, and I know more people. There were more people like me from the Committee of Concerned Scientists, where I am the vice chair of the board for chemistry. Several of these people went to the Soviet Union to do seminar, but we need more people that are ready to do these kind of things and help others, even if you don't know them.
yeah. What about
As
navigating the pressures of because scientists are often under pressure from they're trying to find funding for their projects, and then who are the funders and what are the funders expecting? There's political, financial, and corporate interests who try to influence science, or even in some cases, intentionally produce bad science. How does one, as a responsible scientist who wants to create progress, navigate that?
Look, a lot of scientists refuse to work on things that they know
Uh-huh.
that they produce bad things. As a person of the chair of the Human Rights Committee, we had a lot of cases of scientists. As a matter of fact, it was in Canada that got funding from a pharmaceutical company on some drug. In 2 years, the drug did very well, and on the third year, the drug became a problem, and the university got a lot of money from
Mm.
this company and did not want the scientists to publish it.
Yeah.
And the scientists had a dilemma. At the end, the scientists published and the university fired the scientist, and we had to fight for these things. So things like that are going on all the time, and
Yeah.
scientists have to go with their conscience.
But this is part of the responsibility that you were talking
It
about,
is
right?
part
This
of
is
the
yeah.
responsibility. As I said, scientists
It-
have more responsibility than any other profession. If there are, Daniel Barenboim is a very famous pianist and conductor. He was the director of the Chicago Symphony for many
mm,
years. That is considered, if not the best, one of the best symphonies in the world. And he put together musicians from all the Middle East. But they don't have the status of scientists. So when they were interviewed, they had to blur the face and change the voice.
mm.
Scientists are not afraid to be interviewed. They have a very different status. And they have to, oh God, again, and they have to take advantage of this status that they have, and really use it for the betterment of humankind.
Yeah.
And this is what is so important. Look, the gas chambers in Auschwitz were developed by scientists.
Uh-huh.
So scientists did bad things. There is no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. So that responsibility and that solidarity, right, across science, responsible scientists, sticking together under those pressures is a super important part of that. Wow. Well, listen, I'm the book is really fascinating. Again, have you got a copy there? Let's hold it up and show everybody what the book looks like. This is Human Rights and Peace: A Personal Odyssey. I've dug into this myself. It's a really great read. I highly recommend it. I'll include a link to where you can find the book in the comments, as well as some information about the Malta conferences and where you can make donations to support the incredible work that you're doing.
You want me
So
to give you now the website for the Malta conferences?
Oh, I have it, and I will put it
Oh,
in.
yeah.
I'll put it in there. Yeah. So I did a little research on you before we met here. So listen, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really terrific episode, and I just am so impressed and pleased and grateful for the work you're doing, and I hope you can keep at it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And if your audience will read the book, every book, some portion of that goes to support the Malta conferences.
Terrific. All right. Again, thank you so much, Zafra.